Vicky, I don't know how many times I tell people in counseling that you need to set boundaries so that you don't resent your family, or you need to set boundaries so that they don't take advantage of you. But how do you help someone to know the difference between having boundaries and trying to control the people in their lives?
The family unit is probably the most special and precious unit that we have for any of our activities, living, just basic life. An example that I use for some parents or some children is that if you're at a ballpark and there's a bunch of kids climbing up the backstop, and you go over to your child and say, come on, we can't do this, you're going to get hurt. A lot of times the child's going to say, but they get to do it. And a great answer for that is, our family doesn't do that. And that leads to discussion of all families are different and they all have their boundaries, but it's not to control, it's to conduct life. And when children see that those parents don't allow this and those parents don't allow that, they start seeing that the parents are concerned about them, they love them, they want to protect them, and that some of the rules that go with a family unit are necessary for those things.
There's a thing where if a person didn't have boundaries before, they're going to resent boundaries when you give them to them. But there's this thing in ourselves we have to know: are we trying to control other people? You know, this is my boundary, but what that means is that everybody else has to sacrifice their boundaries in order to follow my boundary. There's got to be a place where we find a compromise, or we find an awareness as to why is this my boundary, and how does it pass the eye test? If you look at it and it looks like you're just controlling your family, guess what? They're going to see that too, and they're going to react to it, and usually it produces the opposite result of what you would want.
And a lot of times the children need ownership in those boundaries. So a great thing to do would be to have a family meeting, and that's where a lot of the compromise would come in, and say, what do you think about how far should we go with this, or how far should we go with that, and let the children be an integral part of setting those boundaries so that they have ownership in them.
There's a lot to this one, and there have been times whenever I've talked to people and we've discussed setting boundaries, and they come back and they say, hey, it didn't work. Well, setting boundaries didn't work. Well, if your boundaries are about control, they're not going to work. If I use my cell phone as a hammer and assume that it doesn't work, well, no, that's not what that does. That's not how that works. And a lot of times we don't set boundaries because we don't know how to set boundaries. Mr. Piggy's talking about teaching your kids the difference between boundaries and control, and that's going to happen when you model them, when you teach them how, because that's not a very natural process. And if you need some help working through that, we would love to help you.